Over the years, I've tried several dating sites. On May 13th, 2018, I was sent an email on OurTime.com from a Larry Larson, 65, living in Jacksonville, Florida. The flirt read, I'm so attracted to your looks. I love your hair. Can I call you mine? His posted picture showed a very attractive gray haired man with a delicious smile. I responded saying I liked his hair too. We chatted back and forth for about half an hour, and it was getting late, so he asked me if we could continue our conversation tomorrow. I agreed, and he wrote good night. The next morning, I woke up to a delightful good morning from Larry. He said he would be busy all day, but would like to chat in the evening. I did not respond to that message. He did send a message around 10 p.m. wanting to talk, and I said I was available. Right off the start, he asked why I didn't respond to his morning message. I told him I didn't want to interrupt his day and was waiting for the evening talk. He asked me to always answer him no matter what. I said okay. Since we were chatting on our time, he asked if he could have my email, as it would be easier for him and he wanted to get off the site and concentrate on just us. I thought about it and did agree. He confirmed with me and we began our long letters on Gmail. On May 17th, he notified me that he was leaving for Brazil to finish up an engineering road project he was doing. He would be gone for at least 3 weeks. He asked for my phone number so we could finally hear each other's voice. I agreed again to his request. He got on to his destination, and I got an email from him around 5 p.m. saying he was in his room and very upset with himself. He forgot his calling card in his jeans in Florida. He could not go 3 weeks without talking to me and asked me if I could get him a $300 Visa card that he could use just to buy minutes to talk to me. I wasn't sure he could tell I was hesitant. I finally agreed and bought him the card he requested. I call him on this certain number, and I did. From then on, we talked all the time. He would at times send me letters telling me he was falling in love with me, wanted to get married, buy a home, and live forever together. I was taken back at first that he could say these words so soon. In time, I was telling him I loved him too. Larry explained to me that he had been doing this job for over 2 years and that this would be the final trip. He said he was getting paid 2.4 million plus a bonus of 150,000 by the first week of June. Around May 29th, he called me crying like a little girl. There was an accident on the job site, seriously injuring 3 of his workers. He did not get hurt, but in the event of him trying to save one of his workers' lives, his wallet fell out of his pocket and later got stolen. All of his money and cards were gone. He asked me if I could send him $1,000 to help him get through until he could transfer money from other accounts. I agreed and bought him two $500 One Vanilla gift cards. I would call and give him the numbers. It seemed simple enough since I had never done anything like this. As the days went on, he became more depressed and upset. He had just enough money to finish up the job, but now there was an accident, and he was finding he didn't have enough money to do the repairs, pay the workers, and pay for the hospital bills. On June 1st, he asked me for another $3,000 in One Vanilla gift cards. Since stores will only allow you to buy two $500 cards at a time, I found myself running through town going from store to store buying these cards. Now, this is getting to be more complicated for me. I was becoming very stressed and I had doubts about what I was doing. Going into the second week of June, he was asking me to get bank Visa card with at least 5K available. I did do this. My credit union asked me questions what was the money for. I lied and told them it was for house repairs. I do not think she believed me. That was okay because I didn't believe me either. So now he has conned me into more money. Now comes the good part. He asked me to open up another bank account through Bank of America so I can have money deposited in it from another friend and then send to him the card numbers when I do the withdrawals. He has a male friend that has agreed to start sending him money, but did not want to send gift cards, so I was the go between. A total of $15,200 was deposited into my account. Gradually, every other day or so, I would send him a couple of $1,000s. All along, he was still professing his devotion and love for me. He couldn't wait to see me. In the middle of June, he texted me saying he got paid and was heading for the airport to buy his ticket to come home. It was planned that I was going to pick him up at the Tampa airport. I waited and waited for his call. He finally called from his apartment and said that his funds had been frozen and there was no money for him to leave. He said that Brazil was holding his funds until he paid the 1% of the 2.4 million for a business tax. He now needed $24,000. I told him I didn't have any more money to give him. I had already sent him a total of $11,000. I could do no more. I asked if his friend Laverne could send it to him. He told me he had already sent a lot of money and wasn't sure if he could do any more. After a week of begging, Laverne did agree to pay him 6K to leave Brazil. He asked if he could get another 5K. I went to my bank to get a personal loan. As I'm sitting in my bank on June 23rd, I was being questioned why I needed more money. I couldn't lie again. I told my loan officer what was going on. I had a bank statement of deposits from Laverne's bank and gave her the numbers. She immediately calls a Pennsylvania bank and asks for the fraud department. Right away, she asked me if they have a customer by the name of Laverne so and so. She said yes, she has been a very good customer for years, but they had flagged her account a couple of weeks ago and were watching her activity, but it still wasn't enough for them to stop the withdrawals. So Laverne is a she, not a he. I went to the sheriff's department and filled out a fraud case that day. I closed my Bank of America account. I called and reported Larry to OurTime.com. His account was discontinued under the name he used to open the account as Alex. On July 1st, Laverne was supposed to be getting the money for Larry, but the bank had brought her into the fraud office and told her about me. She called Larry and told him to rot in hell and that she knows of me. Neither one of us have heard from him since. I did find out from talking to Laverne that she was Skyping with a Larry almost every day. We compared our stories and they were very similar. He played both of us like fine-tuned piano. Laverne was out of over $35,000 and I was out over $11,000. It took him 2 months to get close to 50K from both of us. We wonder how many other women he was doing this to at the same time. To date, I have not heard anything from the police. They have told me it is almost impossible to retrieve my money and to find him. It has been over 2 years since the ordeal. I never thought it could happen to me again, but it did happen again 2 years later. And the following is part 2 of the same victim's encounter with a scammer. I became a member of Match.com in July of 2019. It wasn't the first time I joined, but now I think it'll be my last. I came across a man who I found to be very genuine. I loved his profile and pictures. He went by the tag True Cares. I sent him a wink and a short message. He did not answer right away, which made me believe he was not interested. But 3 days later, I received a message. He had been quite busy and finds it hard to check messages, but liked what I read and liked what he read about me. He explained his life is in turmoil and he wasn't sure he needed to be on the site at this time. He asked if I could be patient with him, and when things settled down for him, we could continue chatting, and I agreed. I continued to search the site, but no one compared to him. He was always on my mind. His name is George O. Ingram, 61, from Jacksonville, Illinois. He is an engineer specializing in building bridges and road construction. His business travels all over the world. After being married for 25 years, he lost his wife to cancer in 2014. He also lost his son to a drunk driving accident a year later. He has managed to have a married daughter living in Manchester, UK, with 2 children. His father was a U.S. diplomat to Italy, England, Singapore, and Germany. He lived in all of these countries and more during his entire childhood. He formed his own business, GI Construction and Maintenance, in 2003 out of Chicago, Illinois. 2 weeks after our last communication, George notified me that he was packing to go on an unexpected business trip across the states due to an emergency on the job site. He was leaving that night. He said he'd be gone for at least 3 or 4 weeks and asked if I would wait for him. He requested we get on Hangouts for communication as that is what he uses when on business. I agreed to his request of waiting for him and looking forward to chatting when he got settled. 5 days later, he emailed me apologizing for silence, saying his computer and phone got damaged in his luggage and he had just gotten them fixed. I asked where he was and he replied Hong Kong. I was shocked. When he said across the states, I thought that he meant California. For weeks and weeks, we communicated through Hangouts and sometimes a letter on Gmail. On October 31st, I received a lovely floral arrangement from George saying, I love you. I was surprised. I started to cry. I thought to myself that this is the man I've been longing for. It took a while to return those words, although I've never met him. I've heard his voice or seen his actual face, but I just knew it was right. From then on, we continued planning our future, buying a large home, traveling, and living the rest of our days happy and loving together. We had to schedule our time because Hong Kong is a 12-hour delay, but we always found time to chat. Even through the days continued to go on, I felt he was real and worth the wait. He was planning on coming back to the States before Thanksgiving, but again, that time did not work out. Early November, I had heard from him in 6 days. I kept sending him messages, but he did not answer. Finally, I got an email from him saying there has been an accident on the job site and he had several of his employees that were in the hospital with life threatening injuries. He had been in a coma for days and just came out of it long enough to contact me. He sent a picture of himself sitting in a chair with a bandage over his right eye and IVs in his arm. But he was smiling. He told me his wallet had been stolen with his money, charge cards, and driver's license. As the days went on, he chatted less. He always said he was recovering and trying to find other workers to clean up and finish the mess. He told me he got paid 2.4 million, but it was red flagged by the IMS for money laundering and fraud. The only way he can retrieve his earnings are to do it in person back in the States. He sent me a deposit notification form from Bank of America with the amount stated. He has no money available. I took that info to a Bank of America and they told me that he is not a customer of theirs. He is not in their US database. I questioned what they told me, but George told me it was because of the flagged account that he would not show up as a customer, and I thought I believed him. The week before the holiday, he asked a question. Can you give me $2,400? He arranged to have me deposit three money orders into a bank account based in Georgia. Reluctantly, after several days of soul searching, I did the transfer. He promised me he would be home for Christmas. He was not. I started to become worried that I was getting into a mess with this long distance romance. All I have to go by are the words he says. There never seems to be any guarantees. I just keep waiting and waiting, never hearing a voice. I asked him several times to live chat, but he can't. His computer's broke. I asked him to send me current pictures with a sign saying he loves me. He says that is just stupid and he doesn't have a camera and he never wants to agree to any of my requests. He always has an excuse of why he can't or won't. He calls me stupid, paranoid, sick, and ignorant, and who doesn't trust. I can't believe I took that kind of verbal abuse. I questioned myself. I think love is blind. In January of 2020, he started asking me for $25,000. He needed that money to get out of Hong Kong. I would pay for his flight, hospital bills, rent, and any petty bills. I told him I don't have that kind of money. He didn't believe me. He asked me to sell my house. George always promises he will pay me back double when he returns. Of course, I believe him. So I did list my house. Every day he would ask if it sold. Every day he pressured me to give him the money. Finally, I got a purchase of intent for my house. I couldn't wait to tell him. But something told me to wait. 2 days later, the agreement was declined due to COVID-19. I contacted George and he was so upset. He said that I promised I would sell the house and he would be able to come back. I told him I did what I could. It's not my fault. He accused me of not having it up for sale and that I was lying to him all along. April 14th, I told George I would pay for his plane ticket to come home. I would repay using my charge card and I found a flight for him for $888 in economy. He again hit the roof. He does not fly anything but first or business class, and that it was an insult for me to suggest any different. He wanted the cash, so he could make arrangements himself. He needed 10K. I told him I only have 4,000 in cash. Well, that wasn't good enough. He told me to go to the bank and get a loan to get him out of here. He only deals in cash wherever he goes. He does not pay taxes and has been avoiding the IRS for years in tax fraud. If he has to prove his identity, it could take him and get him in trouble. Well, that information put up a big red flag. This is when I contacted me with Scammy Scammers. She gave us the info that she had on George, and within a few days, I contacted her and told her that George is not real. His business was running out of Nigeria. His birth certificate is fake. His daughter's fake. His Chicago address is to a vacant property, and I've been scammed. George wrote me on Thursday, April 23rd, asking me to still get him money, go to my bank and get a loan. I told him I will, but I didn't go to my bank. On Friday, April 24th, I wrote to George telling him my bank is reluctant to give me money transactions going from Hong Kong. That he cannot deposit cash into my accounts to pay me back the $2,700 he owes me. I told him the bank will get back with me around the 29th, but I doubt I will get the loan due to the info I gave them about the history and the claims. I am no longer corresponding with George, and thank you, Scamming Scammers Action, for helping me see the light. I'm thankful for you guys for saving me. And we'd like to thank this lady for sharing her 2 encounters with the scammers. If you have a story you'd like to share and you've had an encounter with an online scammer, you can share it to our inbox on Facebook under Scamming Scammers Action, and we will narrate your story into a video. Just give us permission to use your story. Thanks for listening. If you need help, you can find us on Facebook under Scamming Scammers Action. Until next time, stay safe. Bye.